Sometimes I have a terrible imagination. Just think of all the awesome miniatures I could make from the cosmic depths of my bits box. And yet, what do? I just copy this chap from an old white dwarf. Welcome to Miniscape. If you're someone of discerning taste, you may have seen my Legion of the Damned Marines in action against some orcs commanded by Ed from Minisodes. One squad is all I have so far, and to be fair, that's all that was needed for some time. Legion of the Damned were but a squad's choice for a Space Marine army in 2nd edition 40k. One squad was all you could have, a fearless, fear-causing, spectral beefed-up tactical squad, with the paint scheme dialed up to awesome. But in 1998, a full Legion of the Damned army list was released in White Dwarf 224, and therein, the rules for a commander for the ghostly Astartes force of your dreams. I'll talk about his rules later. This was not a model you could buy in this form, but he could be converted from a chaplain model, specifically this metal model who is raising his Crozius in such a manner like he is directing his battle brothers towards their objective. The skull helmet and skull icons lend themselves to Legion of the Damned, and with a couple of metal components gleaned from other Legion of the Damned kits, you could really make this guy cook. So that's what I'm going to do. I was lucky that the stars aligned for me to find this model on eBay, and with the Crozius already removed, which is ideal, since it saves me the guilt of having to slice up a rare metal miniature. The slaughter tab states simply, Chaplain, and the year, 1994. Well, brother, expect to become a man of the flames rather than a man of the cloth. The next component I need to recreate this conversion is a plastic power sword. This was part of the assault weapon sprue from this era, along with the chainsword, power axe, power fist, and an array of pistols. I won't be using that bolt pistol though, but one of these damned specific metal bolt pistols with a skull over the barrel. I wonder if the skull aids with the aiming. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing me tear this off the metal tab with such ungainly fervour. Before gluing any of the pieces together, I trimmed away any mould lines with the edge of my craft knife. On the power sword, I cut away the little dome at the bottom, so it would fit around the model's hand, which already had some nub in there. I had to get rid of one of them, and the plastic component seemed like an easier win. The first part of assembly was to push this guy into his slaughter base, and secure him with superglue. And then I attached the plastic power sword with superglue. While that was drying, I used this modelling putty to fill in the gap in the base. It seemed like a sensible move to pin the bolt pistol arm. I began this process by drilling a hole in said arm, and an equivalent hole was drilled into the torso. Some metal wire was inserted into the hole and cut to length. Here I am scoring the metal where the arm will go, which will increase the strength of the superglue bond. With all that done, it's simply a case of applying glue to both sides and ensuring the pin is positioned correctly in the hole to bridge the gap between the two components. Here I am scoring the inside of the metal shoulder pad in the same way as before, and the shoulder pad I am using is the one with a bony motif. Here I'm gluing it in place, and if you pause the video, you should have been able to see some milliput to fill the gap between the arm and the body. One thing I hadn't anticipated was how the bolt pistol would fit against the metal shoulder pad. As you can see, it didn't fit, so I cut the arm just before the wrist and extended it with a pin, before filling in the gap with some milliput. So yes, he's got an abnormally long forearm, but this was preferable to slicing off parts of the metal components. There were doubtless simpler solutions to this problem, such as using a different arm piece, but here we are. In this shot, I'm supergluing the backpack in place, and you can see I've added some sand to the base to give it some rough texture. White Dwarf issue 224 from August 1998 included a mini codex for Legion of the Damned written by Jervis Johnson. Allow me to digress for a moment. This is a wonderful White Dwarf magazine, a section on Legion of the Damned, Warhammer Siege, this magnificent Talan Imperial Guard army, Necromundan pit slaves, and these Chaos cultists. Damn, these are hard to find. I'll hopefully net some one day, when the price is right. I'd love to add some as allies for my Chaos Space Marine army. Of course, I couldn't not mention the Imperial Fist Supremacy Force, which gets a big advert here. If that's something that tickles your fancy, check out my Supremacy Force playlist, which covers my full restoration of this set. But back to the Legion of the Damned army list. The rules here allow you to field a full army of Legion of the Damned, rather than just a tack-on token squad. At most, 25% of your army can be characters, at least 50% must be squads, and up to 25% can be support. The same special rules exist as per the Legion of the Damned squad entry from the Ultramarines Codex, with a few additions. For example, your units can teleport into battle, which must be done in the first turn, though this is forbidden if they are a vehicle or riding a bike. Your Legion of the Damned army list must have an army commander. Despite it saying 0 to 1 here, he should probably just say 1. This flavor text reads, "Although nothing is known about the Legion's higher organization, this mysterious figure has been sighted directing the Legion's attacks. It is not known if he is the master of the Legion or the equal to a Space Marine captain." Well, it's definitely not the equal of a Space Marine captain, not when comparing raw stats anyway. Compared to the profile of a Space Marine captain, the Legion of the Damned commander has an extra weapon skill and ballistic skill, and one less pip of leadership. Not that it matters too much about that last one since he's fearless. Weapons, armor, and war gear options are the same as other Space Marine characters, including the bike option, though taking a bike negates the ability to teleport in. I mean, who does he think he is anyway, Doom Rider? 200 points seems steep though compared to the 96 for a standard Space Marine captain. For 104 points, you only get 2 extra stats, though that weapon skill is something. I suppose there's the teleport option, and he has the rare strategy rating of 6, which is not held by many other characters in the game. Only the likes of Big Daddy McCrag are equal in their strategic prowess. We need to mention the power sword issue though. The picture had a power sword, and power swords are missing from the assault weapons section of the war gear list for the Legion of the Damned. Does that mean then that Legion of the Damned can't take power swords? Maybe it was just a typo, or maybe the model was a mistake. Maybe you're allowed to dip into the Ultramarine Codex for the sword. Maybe it could be something from a war gear card. Maybe I'm just overthinking this. But just so you know, if you rock up to my gaming table with this guy, and he's equipped with a power sword, having paid 6 points for that privilege, I would let you play him. Just saying. There's a bit about how to convert him here, and the power sword is mentioned by name, so it doesn't seem like a throwaway error. The other parts you need to build the commander are listed here as well. Imagine picking your parts via mail order for a striking conversion. What a time to be alive. It's painting time. I begin with a black prime using Colourforge matte black spray. The first paint I go for is Citadel Thunderhawk Blue, which I paint on all of the sharp edges, such as these panels on his backpack and his bum armour. Also on the elbow section and the top and bottom of the armour panels on the leg, on the edges of the arm armour and the fingers, particularly the knuckles, on the feet, as you can see here, and to outline this distinctive shape at the bottom half of his leg. I'm using one of my smallest brushes for this, and as you can see, it's painstaking work. But to be fair, I didn't have to paint the base coat. I achieved that with spray paint, which saved a lot of time. With all that done, it's time for a second highlight, and for this, I use Fenrisian Grey. This time, it's just on the sharpest edges, or in the case of the elbow, in the middle of the curve on the backside armour here. You can see that I just paint the corners. There isn't really an easier solution to this, other than time, and patience, and a steady hand. And I know people hate edge highlighting, I somewhat agree. I have to be in the right mood for it. But after years of giving it a go, I feel happier with the outcome now. As you can see, my preference when highlighting black armor is to use grey paints at the blue end of the spectrum. And I know this wasn't how I painted my Legion of the Damned Legionnaires, but that was a whole squad, and this is a character, and I wanted to give him more attention. I'm leaving the black highlighting now, and moving on to some yellow. I choose golden yellow from my collection. This paint goes on reasonably well over black, and also, it's probably a bit too early in the day for dark sand, let's be honest. Heresy, I know. Of course I'm joking, I'm just trying to conserve the precious dark sand. And I just wanted to test out this paint and see how it works in this scenario. On the backpack, the flames are sculpted, so I can just drag the edge of my brush over that part. But on the leg greaves, I'm required to sketch out a flame pattern and colour it in with the yellow paint. I also do this on the dagger, and you can see my method of painting wiggles and then filling them out somewhat. What I'm painting here are a few examples of freehand. However, there was a lot of tidying up to do off camera, so I could get it the way I wanted. And this included tidying up a few mistakes which you can probably see. Painting whilst filming is very hard, as you probably know. Anyway, it's time for some tan earth, which as you know, is the pilot fish for something I adore. This goes on loads of places: the purity seals, all of the skulls, the chest piece, the helmet, and the big bony bit on the shoulder pad. You know what I'm talking about. Basically, if it's bones or cloth, it gets tan earth. And that's how it looks at this stage. When the tan earth is dry, I crack out the Citadel Skeleton Horde contrast paint, and I apply it liberally to all the areas I painted in the previous step. And the eagle-eyed among you may notice I'm using a new brush which I bought. It's an orange brush, apparently. I'll let you know how I get on with them after I've given them some hammer for a few weeks. But initial impressions are good. While the skeleton horde is drying, I take some war paint's flickering flame to begin the process of making it look orange to yellow. Yes, I know the flames are the wrong way around, but this is exactly how I want it. You probably can't see the difference on film between these two yellows, but it's there, trust me. The next part of painting the flames involve orange-red by Vallejo, and this is the darkest part of the flames that you can see, and also occupies the smallest area. I dilute this colour quite a bit, and apply a few layers until I get the desired outcome. Back to the cloth, and the bones. I mix tan earth with some dark sand and begin bringing some of the lighter beige colour. Generally speaking, this goes on all of the bone and cloth areas, except the deepest recesses, where I want the shade from the skeleton horde to be visible. And oh baby, you know what time it is. In this step, I repeat the previous process but just cover less area, and focus on the more upper-facing sections and the skulls. I'll leave shadow where shadow looks like it would be, just above the eyes for example, and between the teeth. And then I grab some white by AK, mix it in with the dark sand, and repeat the previous step. Hopefully you can see the layering of colour to give a nice gradient on the bony sections. Sometimes you paint something and are really satisfied with the outcome. That's how I felt after this step. Pure skeleton heaven. The last step was just to use a bit more white to pick out the edges on the chest feathers here, to really make them pop. Time for some metallics. And I'm not going to do anything too fancy here. I'm using P3 cold steel to paint the power sword and the vents and pipes on his backpack and the magazine and various parts on his bolt pistol and the rims of his fancy armour. I needed a good point for this, and the orange brush didn't let me down. Flat brown was used to paint the pistol holder and base coat the chaplain's Rosarius, though since this is now a commander and not a chaplain, I guess it's just a fancy badge. We can invent a story for that at some point. Corn red is used on the wax part of the purity seals and on the eye lenses. Mixing flat brown with some orange, I highlight the edges of the pistol holder. And here he is at this stage. Evil Sun Scarlet, a brighter red, is used to highlight the tops of the purity seals. Dwarven Gold by Metal and Alchemy is painted on the Rosarius. In case you haven't seen my other videos where I've painted gold, I always find a base coat of brown to lead to a more rich and lustrous base coat. Brown first, then gold. Try it if you fancy. You'll probably see here that I've lined the pistol holster with some red as well, because that's what it looked like on my reference image. Nuln Oil goes all over the metallic areas, and I wick away the excess with my brush to try and leave the shadow in just the right place. And I'm not doing anything else to the metal. I could highlight it with a brighter metal, but to be honest, I just don't feel like it at this stage. My eyes are drawn to the flames and the bones you see. Grass Green by AK is painted on the top and the rim of the base, and later the texture is highlighted with dark sand. And Reichland Flesh Shade is painted on the Rosarius to shade it. And this was going to be the end of it, but then I decided it would be fun to make a banner for him. I base coated this plastic banner pole brown with Humbrol 251. The banner was made of some thin card which I cut to size and painted black. And now you can enjoy my skull freehanding journey. I started with a dome using Vallejo tan earth. A figure of 8 is added for the eyes, and the dome is filled in. An upside down heart shape is added for the nose cavity. And then the area around this is filled in. And finally, the teeth are added below. I'm no artist, but I hear that breaking down more complex shapes into simple ones, and then combining them together, is a good way to unlock freehanding skill. The whole thing is then painted with solid tan earth, and a mixture of dark sand and tan earth is painted over the skull, save for those areas in shadow. While that dries, I paint some flames with flickering flame using wiggly lines of differing length. Dark sand alone is used to add highlights to the dome, and the teeth, eye sockets, and nose cavity. Another 2 highlights are done using dark sand mixed with white, and finally, white alone. On the banner pole, I add P3 cold steel to the joints and the top piece, while flat brown is used on the rest of the pole. And finally, the metal is washed with Nuln Oil. To finish the flames, I use orange red along the bottom like so. And then the tips of the flames are picked out with Flash Kits yellow. And that's the banner done. All that was needed was to glue it to the pole, and then glue the pole to the backpack, and the commander was done. And here he is. A miniature once a chaplain, now a leader of spectral legionaries. Once shouting the litanies of hate at the enemies of the Imperium, now just tossing vengeance with carefree abandon, without any of that litany nonsense. It's one thing to see a miniature converted in a White Dwarf magazine from days of yore. It's another to actually do it yourself. In my mind, this guy was a legend. He was in one of my favourite battle reports as a youth, and now he is mine. And he stands at the head of a humble collection of Legion of the Damned, but hopefully an expanding collection. After all, there's no lack of inspiration for converted models in this particular magazine. Who knows which ghostly apparition will join my force next? Which one would you like to see? Do let me know in the comments. Remember, if you want to live through my hobby life vicariously, you can also check out my Instagram, where I post regular hobby updates and work-in-progress pictures of my latest projects. And with that, I'd better go paint some more minis. Take care, and thanks for watching. Who gives the orders here? Damned Commander. Who gives the orders here? Damned Commander. I went to the store to get more fire. To start the war, Legion are damned, Legion are nice. Take your chances, roll the dice, take your chances. It would be awesome If we could start a fight, it would be awesome, yeah. Let's have a fight. I am commanding you. Yeah. I am commanding you. Yeah. To start a fire.